Welcome to In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am passionate about helping women live authentically by listening to their inner voice. Get ready to be inspired by women of all walks of life that have set aside their should-bes and not good enoughs and are standing in their true voice, the voice of wisdom that each and every one of us has inside. Hello, hello. This is Kelly, and you are listening to In Her Voice. Thank you for inviting me into your space, into your ears today. And I am just so grateful to you for being here. Today's guest, Miranda Sophia, is just amazing. You are going to love her. We're talking about the art of surrender, but oh my gosh, we're talking about a lot more than that. We're talking about deeply connecting with your inner voice. We're talking about embracing the parts of yourself that you're most ashamed of. You guys, this is deep work today. Even just listening is deep work. Oh my goodness, you are going to love it. Before I dive into today's interview, I want to remind you that I am over on Instagram. Do you guys know that? I think most of you know that. But if you don't, you can find me at Kelly J. Covert. And let me tell you what I'm totally digging about Instagram right now. Number one, I am doing stories way more than I'm posting. And that is because I just really like talking to you. And when I'm doing stories, I feel like I'm sharing me with you. And then you guys can send me messages back and connect with me that way. And let me tell you, I love getting your messages on Instagram. So if you are connecting with me over there, thank you. And if you aren't, please join me. The other cool thing right now about Instagram is there's a new thing called Instagram TV where I am able to do longer videos, post longer videos than just like 15 seconds. And so I'm going to be doing some more of that over there. So definitely join me so you can follow along on Instagram TV. It'll be like Kelly J. Covert TV or In Her Voice TV. Maybe that's what I'll call it. So Kelly J. Covert on Instagram, and I'd love for you to connect with me over there. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. Teacher, facilitator, writer, mentor, and change agent, Miranda Sophia is passionate about marrying science and spirituality together. She has a love affair with the wisdom and language of the body and its ability to heal past wounds and reprogram limiting belief systems as she journeys through her own healing. She believes deeply in the power of women coming together, creating meaningful relationships, weaving a support net of sisterhood, and lifting one another to their highest potentials. Perhaps more importantly, she feels that the magic and power is really found in each individual woman learning how to be sovereign and autonomous, how to be with herself fully, how to have her own back, and how to know the necessity of her voice in this world. Can I just get an amen? That's just the bio. I'm not even done yet. Here, let me keep going. This has proven to be the key in her own navigation of the ups and downs of healing childhood trauma and the resulting mark of depression and anxiety. She is influenced by several traditions and teachers, as well as the most current and relevant science of our time. She's a dedicated independent researcher and student and has been trained in chakra therapy, mind-body integration, yoga, meditation, and biofield tuning. Somatic practices and nervous system health are foundational to her offerings. Okay, you guys, so I'm just going to jump right in. Can say, going to make it any better. Enjoy. Miranda Sophia, I'm so glad that you are joining me on In Her Voice. How are you
Kelly,
today?
thank you so much for having me. I'm seriously so excited.
You're welcome. Like, I feel like we already had like an awesome conversation in the 5 minutes before we started. So this is going to be magic today. Also, it's the day after summer solstice, and my birthday was the 20th.
Yes, happy belated. I was going to say happy birthday.
Thank you. And I'm just feeling like magical. Like there's magic in the air right now. I just feel it. So anyway, I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast to talk about And I love the way that you phrase this, the art of surrender. Oh, so beautiful, especially when we frame it that way. And you have written this beautiful essay as part of a book about surrender called Her Art of Surrender, which we can talk more about at the end. But I was so fortunate to get to read it. And I want to start with the meltdown. Can you just share with everybody sort of when you really reached your, I don't know, I want to call it your truest point of surrender?
Yeah, you know, that's so true, because I'd say that I've had so many meltdowns over my life. But that was really a time that, coming out of the meltdown, I took a new path. And the one that you're talking about is in my story. I share that while I was at a mind-body integration chakra therapy training with Anna Dea Judith a couple of years ago, we were doing these bioenergetic exercises, which is just moving the body in certain ways that helps to, like, really simply unblock trapped emotions from the body and the nervous system. And there was one we were doing just really simply lifting our hips and lowering them back down. And as mine lowered, they touched the ground, and I remember it so clearly. It was like this wave, this convulsion that started from my hips and just like pulsed and pumped all the way up through my body, through my belly, through my chest, my neck, and exploded out of my eyes. And it took me into like a full-blown meltdown, a full-blown tantrum. And so many people in the class, the assistants, came over and they held space for me. And they actually, what they had me do was increase the charge of this meltdown. And so they had me make fists and stomp my feet and slam my fists into the ground. And there were people that were holding my head and my hands and my body. And they were all silent. They were just kind of like soothing me, but also just like totally out of my way. No expectation for this to stop. Just like in the most beautiful way held space. And I think that was my first real experience of having space held for me and really getting what that means. And so, the interesting thing was, as my body was doing this, and it was like, we're in a class of 30 people, and it went on for about 10 minutes, and near the end, they started to go into lecture again, and I was still over with the people who were holding space for me in the corner. And inside of this experience, I was in there like cheering myself on. It was like, I felt like I was like, hands behind my head, legs crossed, like, I was like, go body, go. You're doing such a good job. And it was just like a pure body experience. And then it was just like, as it was almost over, all of a sudden it was like I got sucked into the pain. Like that part of me that was the witness got sucked into the pain. And I had like this moment of desperateness to like reach out and be like, no, like somebody make this stop, like, to reach out. And I had this like lightning sharp, clear voice that came through that was like, it's okay, sweet child, I've got you. And with that, I just crumbled. I just leaned into and surrendered into that experience and that processing, and let it complete its cycle and its path. And then after that was all over, it was kind of like I got up and like thanked the people around me and went and sat for the rest of the lecture.
It's like you were done. So there's so much about this story, this picture that you paint, that is so interesting to me. But one of the questions that rises up for me, because I think that every person listening to you tell this story can relate in that feeling of like desperate, just make it stop. And I think we do this often, right? We feel those emotions and then we're like, whoa, no. And then we will do anything to make it stop. We'll, numb ourselves out with food. We'll go to sleep, will run for miles and miles. It looks different for everybody, but we will do anything to make it stop, right? So my question is, why do we resist moving through the emotions that are going to help us feel clear on the other side?
Well, we were trained that way, right from the get-go. For me, I knew I grew up with parents that come from a generation of, suck it up. And even though, my parents were quite, rebellious in a way. My mom's very outspoken and has always, cheered for me to be an empowered woman. But at the same time, they didn't have the capacity to hold my giant amount of emotions. We have children that are coming in now that are highly sensitive and empathic and very emotional. And, that's more common now. I was kind of the first wave of those children that came in that just felt everything. And so that was too much. They didn't have the capacity to hold that. And so I didn't know what it felt like to have space held for emotions to flow through, because our body is made, it's a wave. It's a wave that rises up, and then it discharges, and then it comes back down. And that's the natural cycle of our nervous system. That's called regulation in the somatic world. But we tend to have had that cycle, that regulation cycle, cut off at some point. And so especially if that happened over and over and over again, then that becomes the place from which we act from, the place of safety. And I know I also had the experience of when I was too much, that I would, my parents would sort of, because they couldn't handle it, it was so much for them, they kind of disconnected. So for me, feeling emotion and expressing emotion equals losing love and connection. And so that became a very, very unsafe place for me to be in. And so, I teach and study from the psychology of the chakras, the developmental psychology of the chakras as a mapping system to where we store all of these kind of underlying stories. And that's sacral chakra, which is, that's where we learn in our development. We're starting to explore the world around us. We're starting to feel emotion, and we're starting to, use our sensory exploration of the world, learning boundaries. And if that developmental stage is not allowed to happen, which, in the world we live in, very few people are able to grow up in the way that we need. That's just the way that culture is set up. But we don't gain this sense of self. Kind of the boundaries of like where we begin and where we end are really blurred. Yeah. And so instead of being in ourself, and like I call it in the book and I call it in my teachings, like being full of ourselves, meaning like us being in the container of our skin, we tend to reach outside of ourselves because it's really uncomfortable to be with the sensations and the feelings that are within us. So we go outside of ourselves to hold on to things, people, we reach outside to fill ourselves up with, the foods or the drugs or the social media or the whatever that hit is, to temporarily numb that sensation.
Yeah. And what it makes me think is it's no wonder that so many women are walking this earth feeling like they're not enough.
Right.
And I really feel like that just comes from that place of not allowing ourselves to acknowledge everything that we are. And oh my gosh. Okay. So that was just a thought that just popped up, but I have another question, and I actually wrote this down before we got on, and I was like, oh, am I really going to say that? And so I'm really going to say it. So you said your parents, like that you were a really sensitive kid, very empathic, that it was just too much. And so I want to talk about the word crazy.
Thank you.
I mean, can we just talk about that?
Please. Oh my God. So, I'll go really, really real and raw here, because of all of this. And I just want to put a side note that when I talk about being sensitive and empathic, in the somatic experiencing world, which I'm not a practitioner, but I do study it, kind of independent study, there's kind of this like, that's not like this label that we're stuck with when we have a dysregulated nervous system, or when we have this abundance of charge, or we have this lack of boundary and sense of where we begin and where we end. That is what creates a sensitive person and an empath. And that once we kind of weave all of those boundaries and the sense of self back together, then we get to keep receiving the information that is the gift of being an empath, but we don't have all of the like drama that goes with it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that, because I think that, and I don't remember exactly when it came out. A few weeks ago, I had Marian Buck-Murray talking about what it means to be a sensitive person, a highly sensitive person. And I think that this is a really good distinction in that you don't have to have all of the drama, but it's often sort of like what happens before you figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. So crazy. Yeah. You know, I have spent my whole life trying to prove that I'm not crazy. And I think that became a gift because that sent me, you know, one of my addictions is learning and my intellect. And I've searched far and wide for the thing to fix me, but also for validation that I wasn't crazy, because it's all very real to me in my experience. And then last week I had this like another moment of surrender where I was like, can I swear? I meant to ask. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Where I was just like, holy fuck, we are all crazy. We are all batshit nuts. And we are all just literally just dying our way through life, suffering our way through life, trying to prove to somebody, to ourselves, that that's not true. And like the moments when I'm in surrender, the moments where I'm like in joy, is the moments where I'm owning my batshit craziness, where I let myself say whatever it is that I need to say, where I let my arms wave, where I let my body move, where I screw up. Like when I can just let myself be that kind of crazy, it is the most liberating thing. And
yeah, you know, I decided a long time ago that for me, and this is a personal level, right? Crazy is such a good place.
Oh, yes.
Because there's freedom there. It's like it's owning all of the parts of me. Like I don't have to be ashamed of any of it. And I think that's where the negative connotation of crazy comes, right? It's like this place where we have to hide the stuff that's not acceptable and the stuff that's not good, or, you know, the way we should be or whatever. And then that's what creates the neurotic drama, if you will. It's like we're trying to hide it all the time.
It becomes,
instead of just allowing.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's that shame piece. And shame is a place that I'm so familiar with and I'm so fascinated with, and that I teach from, is that, you know, shame has the underlying story that there's something wrong with me. And if we feel like there's something wrong with me, or that I'm innately bad, like I'm evil and bad to my core, then what do? You have to like build fortresses around you to make sure nobody can see that. Right?
Right, because if someone finds out about that, then you're in big trouble.
Yeah, because then here enters whatever your story was growing up or throughout your life. Is if somebody sees you that way, then you're going to lose love, connection, whatever, you know, those were my stories, but whatever your story is, which is like, that's our necessity for survival as babies and as humans. And so it's like building up those fortresses and putting ourselves in that place of suffering for our whole lives seems like a better idea. And this is at like a subconscious level where we don't know it's happening, than not having love and connection.
Well, and I think it's important to talk about how when we first start learning these quote unquote lessons, I'll call them, or stories, we're so young that we don't have the skill and awareness to be able to discern the difference, right? Like they're real to us when we're 3 and
Absolutely.
when we're 4 and when we're 5. But the challenge becomes, because we're never going to pick intentionally to suffer, right? But the challenge becomes we learn the story when we're 3, and we don't learn that it's the wrong story until we're 35. And we've lived, the interim believing that to be true. And so it's really about examining all of those stories that you believe and making that decision if you're going to continue to stick with it or not.
Yeah, and I love that because one of the things I'm allergic to is spiritual bypassing. And I mean, we all do it because we all still have so much subconscious stuff that has not been brought to the light yet. But I like to look at this from kind of the psyche and the subconscious perspective of, we now know that trauma is passed through DNA. So it's not, from the spark of creation, from the spark of inception, we say that babies are born pure, but we're born into a specific story already that may not show up right when we are born, but it will unfold. And that has to do with the state of the nervous system of mom and dad. And their nervous system was based on, unless they've done their work, the nervous system of those who have come before us. That's like a vibrational imprint and a cellular DNA imprint. And so all of these things, especially before 3, that are being shown to us and taught to us, and we don't have the ability to understand it all. And so everything becomes this translation, even up to, my son is 6, almost 7, and it's still a translation of his experience. Because, I'm just starting to understand. I'm just starting to understand and make sense of the things. And I say make sense of as in from like, an understanding perspective, I guess, that the things that have happened throughout my life and starting to kind of weave them together into a story that is more coherent than fractured and broken.
And more empowering too, right? Is that, I feel like when I start to, like you say, weave, that's a beautiful word, weave those pieces together, that's the moment when I get to choose.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
And thanks for saying that, because that's the other part where, I guess I'm in the world of like coaching and self-help and self-development and spirituality. And there's so much that people share of, people are often sharing from their aha, big insight moments of the truth of that moment, which is like, just choose or just surrender. Oh, you just have to let go. And the thing is that we miss the whole story that led up to that moment of choosing, of letting go. And that that is the weaving. That is the, I think of the nervous system as like, when it's in a state of trauma or stress, it's like a wire that's frayed. And you have to slowly kind of like work it back together. And sometimes there's like space in between it. So you have to like build the bridge back together. And then the aha insight moment of like, oh, I can choose right now is the moment where it touches together. After the work has done. And, I'm sure you're familiar with Brene Brown and her work. And, she talks about this in her story when she, I can't remember which book this is, but when she's with Pixar and she's trying to understand what makes for a good story. And what they taught her is that, there's 3 acts, and there's act 1, act 2, act 3. And act 1 is the inciting incident. And act 2 is the journey from that inciting incident through the highs and the lows and the failures and the successes to get to act 3, which is where everything starts to come together. And so that in the women's circles and the retreats and all of the courses that I teach is like, that's something that we use is like, you can't skip act 2. even, I think we have such a huge responsibility on social media as people that are in any way holding space or supporting people, is to not skip chapter 2.
Mm-hmm. Well, so back to your meltdown, which really you could see either as the end of Act 2 or the beginning of Act 3. And you heard that voice.
Yeah.
That voice. Let's talk about the voice.
Oh, man. So my majority of my life, and it's still very strongly there, my inner voice has been very abusive. And
something I think we can all relate to.
Yeah. And the thing is that I've identified with that voice. Like, I've thought it's my own voice. I think it's my own thoughts. But what this moment gave me was this, like, whoa, there was this different voice, and that felt different. And like, that was really loving. What? Mm-hmm. And so what I share in this story as well is kind of like after that time when this voice started coming through, and there was a moment where I was bent over and I looked in the mirror and my belly was bulging out. And, after years of body image issues, which again, most women have, the old thought would be like just disgust and like, oh, suck my belly in, or like turn this way, whatever. And there was that voice that came in again, and it was like, oh my God, your body is beautiful. But it wasn't just this thought. It wasn't just like I'm saying an affirmation. It was like my whole body. It was like this, I explained it as this warm embrace of like just the mother's unconditional love. And that just like washed through my whole body. And I was just like, whoa, that's different.
Yeah, it's your truth. Yeah. It's your truth. And oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Our truth, when we find it and we believe it and we feel it and we own it, that's the feeling we're all seeking for every single day. Like I have so many women say to me, I just want to feel fulfilled. And the hard and easy answer to that is find your truth.
Yeah.
Because that will do it. And then that will lead you to the next truth and to the next truth. So how do you really foster your ability and skill to be able to connect with and listen to your inner voice?
It's the work. And, sometimes I'm like, work. We say work like it's like, oh.
And let's be truthful.
Sometimes it feels like that. But I also want to make sure that it, it's not coming from a place of like, or like, I have to do this for my whole life kind of thing. But it comes from the work. It's the chapter 2. It's the, for me, one, and this is, where I feel really called to educate on how our body really works and how the world really works, because the way that we've learned it is archaic and has been scientifically disproven many, many, many years ago. And so I think just that the empowerment of understanding these things, that like, and being an empath doesn't mean that you are slapped with this label and this is your kind of chains to wear for life. That, where was I going with that? Oh, the work. And so for me, there's no constant, because some days I wake up and I'm debilitated by the heaviness of depression, or I'm frozen by the debilitating feeling of anxiety within me. My body is in freeze. So sometimes like taking a step and then a step and a step, that's the work. And, but more regularly, it's my yoga practice. It's dancing and moving my body in sensual ways. And lately it's been like bouncing. And jiggling, really, and like when I put my oil on my face in the morning, it's like making sure that I'm not tensing my face, just like letting my face be mushy and jello, like getting movement and fluidity and softness back into my body. Because when I'm in that rigid state, I'm in that don't see me state. And then if I'm trying to find my inner voice from a place of don't see me, That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So and all of the things that I teach in my chakra balancing courses and in women's circles, there's, I think it's Gabby Roth that has the 5 rhythms. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't. That doesn't sound familiar.
Okay, well, she shares a story about an Indigenous elder that, people would come to her with ailments, and she would her questions to diagnose were, when did you dance? When did you stop enjoying dancing? When did you stop enjoying telling and listening to stories? When did you stop singing? When did you stop being enjoying the sweet sound of your silence? And so for me, it's like, in some capacity, those 4 things or 5 things is what helps me to connect. And then also more recently, over this last year, reconnecting to writing. Just this last couple of weeks, I've started a practice called Morning Pages, where I just sit down and write. Have you heard of The Artist's Way? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. A big part of my own journaling practice is based on morning pages.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That has, it's been, I think I'm on day 8, and that has already radically changed my life, is just getting it all out, because, when we're identifying with the inner voice that is more of the patterned thoughts that I've always been.
I call it our inner mean girl voice.
Totally. Yeah. Then it's hard to hear the true voice, because it's sitting there and waiting, but sometimes we just have to clear that clutter and that chatter and all of that.
Yeah, I call that practice for me clearing space, because I just feel that my head, like if I could peek inside my head, it's like a hot mess. It's like God. My 11-year-old son's bedroom. And which, trust me, is not like, there's no space in there. And so I've got to take the time to clear it out. And it's interesting for me, because I sort of go in cycles. It's not always, my practice is not always the same. It's not always journaling. Morning pages. It's not always meditation. It's not always movement, but I always tend to cycle through all of those things.
Yeah.
Come back to what I'm needing most in any given moment.
Yeah, I'm totally the same. I, for a long time grew up playing competitive sports and, being involved in everything in school and schoolwork and all of that, and everything was so rigid, even though I necessarily wasn't, but I was really forced into that box, and I just can't do it anymore. It's exhausting. And so just listening to the inner voice of like, what is it that I need right now? And sometimes it's watching,
and being okay with it.
And sometimes it's watching Jimmy Fallon videos on YouTube. Like, that is one of my favorite self-care practices, to laugh.
Yeah. Right now, and I'm telling you this because I know that we found each other through Jana Romer, who was on In Her Voice a couple of weeks ago talking about Yoga Nidra. And that actually has been my go-to practice since talking with her, because like I got so stoked about how easy it was.
Right.
Right. Like, you just lay there and you listen, and it's so relaxing, and I don't know, like I will come out, even if I only do maybe like a 20 or 30 minute practice, and it's over and I'm like, oh my God, what just happened?
Well, what's so funny is I can't believe that I didn't mention that. And I always forget to mention it as part of my self-care practice. And I'm wondering if it's because it is just so easy that I just slip it in. Like I do Yoga Nidra at least three times a week. And a lot of them are Jana's classes, and then some of them are my own that I've recorded, as well as Rod Stryker's are really great too on Yoga Glow. And that Yoga Nidra has been, aside from the mind-body integration, that and Yoga Nidra has been life-changing. Absolutely life-changing.
Yeah. It's so cool. Yeah. Like, it's just really amazing. Yeah. And it sort of satisfies the lazy part of me, which, by the way, and this leads to my question. Lazy used to be a word that I was terrified of.
Right.
You know, like if someone thought that I was lazy, or if not even if someone thought, it was really about one day someone is going to find out how lazy I am. And I said that one day. Actually, I was in a family counseling session with my husband and my son. And I said it to the therapist. I was like, I'm really afraid someone's going to think I'm lazy. And she looked at my husband. I remember this so clearly. And they both had this look on their face like, what the hell are you talking about? Like this incredulous, like, really? Like, that's the thing that you're afraid of? And it was almost hysterical. Like, my husband just looked at me. He was like, you are not lazy. And I'm like, sometimes I think I am. Like, I'm really afraid that people are going to, like, call me out on it. And he just was like, what's wrong with you? You know? But I think it just goes to show you, like, the things that we're most ashamed of are also the things that hold us back. And when we start to embrace that, right, that's when our healing begins. So for me right now, I'm in a total lazy mode, which means I want to find the easy way to do things and still get the most bang for my buck. And I am not ashamed of saying that. So if that means laying on the floor and doing yoga nidra, that's what I'm going to do, because that is what I need in this moment. And so how do we begin to embrace those things that we're most ashamed of, that we're the most terrified people might find out about us?
Oh, this is a practice we've been doing lately in circles, is turning to the voice and getting to know this voice that is not our true voice. So, you know, this is where writing stuff down can be really helpful is, you know, for example, you would write down, I feel lazy, or I'm lazy. But then you turn that into you are lazy. And it's as though someone is saying it to you. Mm-hmm. And you're like, whoa, that's not nice.
Yeah.
We don't talk like that around here. So, you know, I think first identifying... Are you still there? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to cough, so okay. I muted myself. Sorry.
Is first identifying sort of what is not you. And then identifying that voice as something that was, you know, even though it can be quite mean and abusive, like it was put in place to protect you at some point. You know, it's like the voice that was like, no, when you are yourself, you lose love and connection. So I'm going to protect you. And this is how we put up the barriers to prevent that from happening. Mm-hmm. So then we can start to have a conversation with that voice of like, okay, you know, I get that you're here to protect me. I get that you're trying to help me, but this is not helpful. And so what is it that we're afraid of right now? You know, what am I really afraid of opening up into? And you know, so for me, embrace is this reconciliation with all aspects of ourselves, like learning to have this really intimate relationship with our thoughts, with our sensations, with our feelings, and letting them guide us to where it is that we are needing to go, where we're meant to go, where we're being called to go. And you can then walk hand in hand with that voice that says you're lazy, because you know if it's coming up because at one point this point that you're at was a dangerous place. And so that's like, it's a really great arrow to there's breakthrough here.
Yeah. I love too, like that it used to be a dangerous place.
Yeah.
And here's that moment of choosing again, right? Where I can say, lazy doesn't have to be dangerous for me anymore. Like I can be safe and lazy at the same time. And I think for me, a big piece of that too is acknowledging that because I'm lazy for 30 minutes this morning does not mean I'm lazy all day long.
You know, and there's a part of that too of like, God, I'm so worthy of doing nothing. and I am still so fucking adored by the universe here in my doing nothing. Like, you know, whatever you use for that, universe, God, source, spirit. I use spirit. But the interconnected path, the interconnected web that weaves us all together, it's like, that still loves you so much in this moment, no matter what you're doing, even if you just were mean to somebody, even if you just totally royally failed at something. You know, there is this, at some point, ability to open up, to feel that, like, infinite source of, like, adoration that the mother feels for their child when they smash the glass because they were really interested in it and they're 2 and they don't know. You know? All of it. And I'm always like, we are baby humans. We are so in our infancy of understanding how to be human, how this world works, how to interact with ourselves and others, and have mastery over ourselves. And so, you know, we have this source that is infused in all of us that is just so unconditionally in awe of us.
Yeah. And you know what's so cool too is that even as sort of baby humans that we are, like, not yet fully evolved, not yet fully understanding of everything that we are already, we are also, from within, we have the ability to mother ourselves.
Yeah.
And, it's just such a beautiful full circle of, like, finally surrendering and allowing and then being. And it doesn't have to feel hard.
No.
It will.
Yeah, it will.
It doesn't have to.
Well, and even to clarify, like, it's going to be painful because we're humans. And my 6-year-old son says all the time, I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel the pain. And I was like, I know, but that's why we came here, to experience the pain and the joy. And they're all equally far away from neutral. Yeah. And we can't just be on one side of the coin. We have to be the whole coin.
And the neutral, maybe what we should be really afraid of is if we feel the neutral all the time.
Yeah, the stuck there. No, we're waving. We're on a roller coaster.
Yeah, we're crazy.
We're fucking nuts.
I think that is the perfect spot to end this conversation. Oh my gosh, but I do feel like I could just go on and on. I am beaming.
Me
Miranda,
too.
you just don't even know, like, beaming from the inside of my soul out. I would love for you to share with my listeners how they can find you, how they can connect and learn more about what you do and who you are in the world.
Yeah, thank you. So I spend a lot of time on Facebook, facebook.com/Miranda Sophia Embody. On Instagram, I'm miranda.sophia.awaken. Really, like, you know, speaking of laziness, like, posting on social media, I'm just like, nah, I'm just going to drop on Instagram stories for 15 or 45 seconds and hang out with people there. My website is mirandasophia.com. I'm working on really building that because I'm feeling a call to get away from social media. I don't know that social media will be here forever. I want to get away from my addiction to it and help everybody else get away from their addiction to it. So I'm also working on building a platform on podia.com, which is where I will host my online courses. And I'll also have a membership there, and which is an online community, so sort of like a Facebook group. So I'm really excited about that as well.
Great. And why don't you tell us a little bit about the book?
So Her Art of Surrender is a collection of stories written by 20 women from around the world who each share their story of surrender and what that means to them. And what I love about this book is that, you know, when I finally got to read everybody's story, I just, you know, even though there's a story about cancer, there's a story about addiction, there's a story about infertility, there's a story about childhood sexual abuse, and there's a story about traveling. And, you know, and even though all of those stories, some of those stories are mine and some of them aren't, I could still connect to each woman on just like a feeling level. And I process so much just by reading everybody's stories. So just a really powerful book. And I really feel like every woman needs to have this in their hands. And it makes a great book for all of the awakening, empowered women in your life. So that comes out in the fall, and pre-order is now.
Fantastic.
And
we'll have a link in the show notes.
Yeah, and if you pre-order right now, I'm actually offering a yoga nidra for surrender and letting go to go with that for free.
There you go. You guys can start your lazy practice of connecting with your inner voice.
We'll totally be enablers for that.
And get the book. And I will second that the book is amazing, and I'm really looking forward to reading through the other essays, because if they're anything like yours, it's just going to compound how amazing it is.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
You're welcome. So one last question for you that I ask all of my guests, and you kind of hinted at it already. What is your inner voice asking of you right now?
You know, there's sort of like the bass tone that I have to keep coming back to, because I'm in a big transition point in my life, and it's just the strong, steady voice that just says, keep going, one step at a time. You know, we're at this big climax in humanity right now, and there's so much pain, and there's so much hurt, and there's so much disconnect, and it's forcing us back together. But in order to come back together, we all need to be here. And, you know, there's the rise of anxiety and depression and suicide. And, you know, that inner voice is just like, clear, keep going. Yeah. You know, we need you. That's for me and for everybody. We need you.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And I will just affirm to you, Miranda, that you are amazing and we need you doing this work. So thank you for being brave and courageous, and taking the hard steps and the easy steps to be exactly who you are meant to be.
Kelly, you have a gift. Thank you. I'm so just filled. I'm just so full right now. Thank you.
Well, we will talk
Sounds
soon, I'm
good.
sure, my friends.
All right.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I always say that at the end of an interview, but that's always how I feel. How lucky are we to have women like Miranda walking on this earth at the same time as we are? Oh, so blessed. One of my favorite things that she said was that to embrace all of ourselves means to reconcile with all the parts of who we are. That's all the parts, not just the shiny, bright parts, but all of the parts, just like me owning my lazy. When we really start to take away the shame and quit hiding those parts of ourselves that we feel like are going to disconnect us from people, you would be amazed at how much more connection you feel. It's so interesting that oftentimes we keep from sharing because we fear disconnection. And that withholding actually disconnects us more than if we would just share all of who we are. It's really, really powerful. So I really hope that you'll check out Miranda's work, that you will pre-order her book. And let me tell you, it is worth it. This book is freaking amazing. And I can't wait to dive in more. And it's nice because the essays they're just short. Like you could just read them in one sitting. So you don't feel like you have to keep going. Like you can put it down and pick it back up and be right back in it in a moment's notice. So definitely check it out. All of those links are going to be on the show notes at kellycovers.com, and you can find them right in whatever podcast app that you are listening to. Just click on the description and it should pop up, and all the live links will be right there. Another live link that you'll find there, and I encourage you to check that out, is my Instagram link. Kelly J. Covert is who I am over on Instagram, actually who I am every day, because one of the things I love about Instagram is sharing me just as I am. I love sharing pictures that my photographer takes where I'm all made up and beautiful, but my favorite parts of sharing are over in the stories where I can just like say what's on my mind. And I often am there with a no makeup and no bra and hair in a messy bun, hanging out with my dog, just sharing with you and connecting with you. And so if you're over on Instagram, please check me out. Come hang out with me, send me some messages, and we will connect there. As always, I want to remind you that you matter. Your work in this world is important, and we need you being you. You are worthy.